If only we knew an expert in some sort of military matters. Representative Joe Sestak of the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania on the phone for me. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for taking time for us this morning.
Absolutely. It's an important day this evening, tonight.
Yeah, it sure is, and we couldn't ask for a better guest than you this morning. So tell us, obviously we've already heard what we think the president is going to say. What is your take on it, and what are you expecting to hear?
Well, I think the president is making the right decision, Stephanie. As you know, we've talked before. What I'm hoping to hear, however, is that he makes it very clear to the public that this is really not about Afghanistan. It's about Pakistan, a nation that's close to becoming a failed state, and that harbors not just 25,000 pretty radical Taliban, but the Al-Qaeda that struck us. And that we cannot go into that country ourselves, but we can be alongside them in Afghanistan, not letting the Taliban escape from them, and that we can help in a political way to turn Pakistan towards the counterinsurgency strategy it must pursue so America is safer, as that nation itself will be if those radical Al-Qaeda and other terrorists are done away with. However, we're not going to nation build Afghanistan, but we do have to recognize we need the society, particularly the warlords and the tribal chiefs we leave behind, have to have some buy-in to some economic development that won't let them be hospitable to the Al-Qaeda in the future. And that's what I'm hoping to hear.
Congressman, the Senate report, again, nothing that I felt like we didn't know, but I mean, doesn't it just gall you that these right-wingers that were behind this strategy that let Osama bin Laden essentially get away at Tora Bora, in complete contradiction of what Dick Cheney said at the time, that, we didn't really know where he was. Well, part of the big reason the president is left with this mess is their disastrous incompetence in Afghanistan.
Yes, I am convinced that report is spot on, and I think it is also has to be added to the history for us to learn from, that when they took our focus away from Afghanistan and placed it in Iraq, that when the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff then said a year and a half ago, Afghanistan has spiraled downward, that they have to recognize that they were in charge. They weren't also just responsible. They should be held accountable for what we now have to do at greater cost. And the consequences of what we have to do are harsher because of what they did not do. Look, I was on the ground, as you know, and we were doing it well. The fact that we would not have put sufficient might in there to have gotten Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, at that moment, I think is inexcusable.
Congressman Sestak, it's not often I play a soundbite of the person on the phone for the person on the phone, but here is you yesterday.
The Afghanistan central government is corrupt, it's inept, and our strategy should not rely upon an accelerated training of the police and the army.
That's a good point that I haven't heard anybody else make, Congressman Sestak, that yes. Because we keep thinking, we keep hearing these things that, we have to train them so we can go, but what did you mean by that? Expand on that.
The statement that I've been asked is that Mr. Gibbs had said at the White House press conference that the major focus of the speech, at least that's how it was relayed to me by the person who interviewed me, would be the accelerated training of the Afghanistan police and military. My point is it should not be the primary focus. It should have been the Al-Qaeda in Pakistan, and that if we rely with our strategy upon any acceleration as of the training of an inept government force, then we will probably have our strategy fail. Afghanistan has spiraled, as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said, so far downward that the Afghanistan police and military can't give us a semblance of security for years to come. And I know what Senator Leahy has said, or Senator I'm awful sorry. The Democratic senator that had said we should not put more forces in, we should just await the training of these forces. If we do that, the security situation is going to spiral even more deeply. And so what I was trying to make the point of is don't think that our strategy should be dependent upon an inept government. It'll take too long to change that government. There are local entities, provincial chiefs and tribal chiefs that we can rely on for some modicum of stability.
So, Congressman, I mean, you know that certainly a lot of people feel like we really should get out, that, you know, if you look at history and the Soviets, that this is just a war we cannot win. How do you answer that? Because, I mean, when you say, you know, there's a less than, you say the focus should be Pakistan because there's less than 100 Al-Qaeda, isn't there, in Afghanistan? Yes. How do you answer just lay people that say, what are we doing there?
Yes. What I say is we should look at Vietnam. We should look at the Soviet Union experience and the British experience in Afghanistan. But then what I want to say is draw the right lessons. When the Soviet Union went in, Stephanie, as you assuredly know, they murdered, killed 1 million Afghanis. They dislocated 5 million from their homes. It gave rise to a 250,000-person insurrection by the Afghani citizens. We are facing 20,000 Taliban at most. 70% of them are there for wage. It's a different type of threat. And yes, there's probably only a handful of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. There's a couple hundred in Pakistan. But what they can do quietly planning against us here is different than what the Soviet Union went in to do, which was to dominate and control. That haven that's in Pakistan.
So it's all about the strategy.
It's a strategy. That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. And now, your colleague, Representative David Obey, yesterday of Wisconsin.
I just think that if this war is important enough to engage in long term, it's important enough to pay for.
What is your reaction to that? Because, you know, it really is stunning to me that we have some of these Republicans. I mean, I think Lindsey Graham literally said the way to pay for Afghanistan is to trim up health care. You know, let's get less Americans health care so that we can escalate this war.
You know, I've never understood that thinking. I mean, I'm in the military. I was in the military, and I went overseas, as you did, to protect people here at home. But we also have to protect people right here at home with health security. I just don't understand that. But I do agree that after 8 years of this war, we should be funding this war within the budget. Now, because it'll help us focus upon what are the priorities we want to do. And so my take on it is that it isn't health care that you want to. There are, I mean, you could just take $79 billion in tax cuts, incentives, loopholes for the fossil fuel industry and think about, well, is that the right thing to do when they're making record profits, you know, in order to fund the war? There is various ways to do this, but I do believe that with our national debt, we should be funding it. I don't believe that Mr. Obey's proposal was the right way to go, but I do believe, as I felt about Iraq, that after a year or two of this emergency war, President Bush called it, we should have brought it in to the budget, and that forces the discipline of prioritization.
Senator, I always make that mistake. Congressman Joe Sestak from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, thank you so much on this important day, taking time for us as usual.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm sure you'll be listening with me tonight to the President.
Yep. Absolutely, I will. All right, there he goes, Congressman Joe Sestak.